Let's do something a little bit different today. In our previous video, we took a close look at a self-portrait by Rembrandt. Today, I want to paint along with that painting. I want to study it, but I want to study it by painting in a sense, in a way that he painted. I don't want to mimic the painting. I don't want to try and study exactly what he did. What I want to do is take what we learned by analyzing that painting, and I want to do some very simple painting to go along with it. So this is not really a painting video in a sense. We are going to paint, but we're going to do some very simple paintings, little studies, to better understand what Rembrandt was doing. To do this, we're going to choose a very simple household object, something that's easily accessible. Now, we could choose something like a cup, coffee mug like this, and it would work fine. But I think if we choose a beautiful houseplant like we have here, it gives us a little bit more life. There's subtle things happening in ways that we can play a little bit. We're going to paint only one leaf out of this beautiful plant. And that's enough. That will give us the model that we need, the understanding that we need. It will allow us to look clearly without overwhelming us with so much detail that we spend our time in all the different details instead of spending our time focused on the one thing that we really want to learn. When we looked at the self-portrait by Rembrandt, we looked at 3 value transitions. One of them was called the insertion transition. And then this one's a little surprising. It's we're inserting a value in between that sequence. So instead of going from light, medium to dark, we might go from light, dark, medium, or dark, light, medium. We saw that towards the top of the painting with the hat, where we went from the dark hat to a light value and then a medium value on top of that. We're very loosely laying in this one leaf here. Now I'm going to add this lighter color in above the leaf, the insertion. So from dark to light to medium, as we said before. You notice I'm not trying to draw an exact copy of the leaf, just something that I can play with, feel happy with. It has a little bit of the feeling and the life and the movement of the leaf. And now I'm coming on top with that darker color, so the medium value. Again, dark to light to medium. And with this medium value, I want it to sit in a little bit with that lighter value. I don't want it to be too much of a distinct break, so you can see between the light and the dark, there's quite a distinct break. But with the medium value, I am creating a somewhat softer transition between the two areas, because we can see in Rembrandt's painting that above that hat, the lighter and the medium value, they kind of softly go from one to the other. It's not a big, huge, readily apparent difference. I'm just adding a little bit more white into this lighter area. I just want to lighten it up a little bit, so it's a little more apparent. Maybe it's a little bit exaggerated in comparison to Rembrandt's painting, but for our understanding and my own understanding, I want it to be a little bit clearer. Later, I might do some more subtle versions, but to begin with, I want it to be a little clear. As we see in Rembrandt's painting, we go from the hat, which is dark, to this area right above, which is lighter, and then the area above that, which is mediums. So dark to light to medium. That light might be subtle, but when you see this painting, especially when you see it in person, even if you don't know that this is happening, you can feel it. You can feel this movement, this light that's moving across the painting and inserting itself in there and giving a movement. It changes it. It takes us away from a flat, static movement, from a static idea of this self-portrait, because it can be. You're sitting there looking straight at the viewer. It can be a little static, but instead Rembrandt is moving us, and he moves us all around, and he keeps moving us through the space. We'll talk about this more in the future, because this is really important. Let's not forget to add a little stem for the leaf, so it doesn't look like it's just floating there in space. We want our leaf to feel vibrant and alive and have a nice little stem for it. In Rembrandt's self-portrait, we also see something called the lost edges hesitation. And this is very interesting. We have the coat and the background, and they're both dark values, and he makes the edge very soft, so it blends, almost blending them together. But we hesitate a little bit in the sense of he brings in a slightly lighter value, so we still see the shape of the coat and of himself clearly. So we don't completely lose the coat and into the background. He's still preserving that shape. And so we're going to do that with this plant leaf. We're going to merge the plant into the background, but we're going to bring in just enough of a slightly lighter value that we still preserve the shape of the leaf. This time I'm going to move it to the right just because that's how it fits into space. I'm not overly worried too much. I'm starting with a somewhat darker color, and here I'm going to add in a light color. Again, it's the idea of that lost value hesitation. So we want a dark area and another dark area, but we also want a slightly lighter area so we keep a sense of the shape of the leaf. We've made the leaf very dark and we're making the background dark, but we still want to preserve the shape, the sense of that leaf, so we don't just lose it into the background. We want to soften it. We want to make it, the leaf and the background, they almost become one, which in some ways can actually make the leaf feel even larger. It makes it fill the space. The space and the leaf are one. But we still want to make it clear what the leaf is. If we just make them one, then we lose it completely. We don't know. We have a less of a sense of where is the leaf? What is the shape of it? What does it look like? This way we preserve the sense of the leaf, but we still allow it to merge into the background and give that softness, that subtlety, and that expansiveness even. We can see the leaf clearly even though one edge is softly fading into the other edge. That is, the leaf is softly blending in with the background. It's very wet there, but it'll dry. Let's see what happens as it dries. Pick it up here and take a look, see how wet the paper is. Sometimes under the light it's hard to see, shift it around a little bit. We could even take the back of the paintbrush here and draw lightly into the leaf, creating a soft line to give it just a little bit of clarity. We can see that Rembrandt does something like this as well. He often, you could say, carves in very lightly into the paint. So he's giving these little marks, he's working the surface a little bit. So even though we have, again, these two edges that are blending into each other, I can just use subtle little techniques to give it a little clarity. I'm just going back to the first leaf a little bit. To me, this edge is just a little bit hard, so maybe I want to work with it a little bit, soften a little bit. I actually want to make it a little darker, to have it clear, but also soften just a little bit the transition from that light area to the medium area just above it. Just wipe away a little paint here, soften the paint that I have a little bit, and just generally make I want the transitions to be clear, but also to leave some softness between the areas so it's not too hard either. Usually with gouache we use water. We use water to thin out the paint and make it flow a little bit better. Maybe we want it a little bit more transparent. The one thing that I do that's maybe a little bit unusual is I don't use just water. I have just a little bit of egg in my water. Why do I do that? It makes it just a little bit more like oil painting. It makes it hold just a little better. The brush strokes on the paper will hold just a little better. We can play with this a lot. Sometimes, in fact, I'll even add just a touch of oil in there, just a touch. I didn't do that today. I just put a little bit of egg yolk in there, and it just changes the consistency just a little bit. You can try it. Egg yolk just in your water, just a little, one egg yolk and a whole bunch of water. We can go into the details later. I think this might be 8-to-1 or 10-to-1 ratio. I actually forget. But it will change how the gouache feels just a little bit. Even though we're looking at it last year in the original video on Rembrandt, the first transition we looked at was the sequential transition. And this is maybe what we might think of as the most basic value transition. 1, 2, 3, from light to medium to dark, or from dark to medium to light. A nice value transition going in order. And we can see this in numerous parts of the painting. In particular here, we can see it from going from the face into the shadow of the face right as we enter into the hair, and then in the hair where it gets darker. So we go from light to medium to dark. Okay, let's add in our third leaf, right down here in the corner. This will be the sequential transition. And again, just kind of playfully placing it in. The sequential transition is maybe a little more straightforward in the sense of we're going from dark to medium to light, or light, medium to dark, everything in order, in a sequence, right? 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. The idea of this is not to create a big painting. The idea of this is to make little studies that help us understand and help us see better. I think playing with it, taking a little bit of paint, putting this in there, playing with it with a simple but beautiful, thank you, model of our leaf, we can see it a little bit for ourselves. And I can talk about this and we can go to the museum and we can look at it, but actually painting it, actually doing it, whether it's a leaf or any, can be a simple object. It doesn't have to be an object. It can be a square with a little line and another line. You don't have to make this anything complicated. But by applying it and actually putting that in paint for ourselves, right in front of ourselves on paper, I think we can really see it so much more clearly. We'll lighten this color up just a little bit. So we started with a darker color for the leaf. Then we added a medium tone underneath that, and now underneath all of that, we're adding in our lighter tone. And we'll see how this sequential transition is actually very nice. It's very beautiful. It really brings this leaf to life. It gives it a bit of a platform. The light, it's rising up. We have this light underneath, and it slowly becomes darker, but at the same time, the leaf is slowly emerging and standing out from this lighter area to the medium, to the dark, and the contrast of that dark leaf to these other lighter areas. And we'll fill out the space around it with this medium value as well. So again, it will give the leaf a nice place to live in, a nice place for it to stand out. And as we paint this, we can notice the difference between the sequential transition and the dark leaf versus the medium tone as compared to the other two transitions, with that hesitation, that lost value hesitation, where the two areas are merging together, or the insertion transition where I have this dark leaf and suddenly I have a light area and then the medium. It gives a very different feel. With the insertion transition, that leaf really stands out and there's this light movement around it, almost like a halo. With the lost value transition, it's this softness where it merges the leaf and the background. But here with this sequential transition, we have a nice darker leaf standing clearly and simply in front of this medium colored, medium value background. And I'm going to go back in here and play with this leaf just a little bit. Really, I'm just finishing up little tidbits that I feel like I want to change a little, maybe clarify this leaf a little bit, clarify the distinction between the medium and light area, but also keep it soft. Right? So I am making it a little clearer. I'm adding a little bit of light into this light area. Again, just because I want to emphasize it and see it clearly, but I also want to make sure to not make those edges too harsh. And by bringing a little bit of that light underneath the leaf as well, which is different than what we saw with Rembrandt, but by bringing it a little bit underneath the leaf as well, right around that edge, it helps it to stand out again. And we were able to do that by ourselves in our own little studies. We can see that, number one, hey, we can do that, which is pretty cool. I mean, you look at a masterpiece and you go, oh, how does he do all this? And we start to realize, oh, I can do that part, and I can do that part, and that's wonderful. I think that's a great feeling. It also connects us more with the artist. It helps us understand more what they're doing. It helps us see better what they're doing. And so in our own little study, as we're painting with it, we can see a little bit how that works, and we can even play with it and change it. And so I say, oh, a lost edge, and it subtly shifts from here to there. It seems a little abstract, but when we're taking our paint and we're playing with it and we're doing that for ourselves, it's no longer abstract. It's clear. It's something real that we're doing right in front of ourselves, for ourselves. And I think that's a really wonderful opportunity. You'll see as I paint, I'm not even, looking very closely to try and get, an exact match of what I'm painting and how the leaf works. I'm just kind of laying it in there, playing with it, and I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about the exact details, the exact dimensions of the leaf. No, I'm trying to study this idea of value transitions. That's my goal. Everything else is something for me to play with, something for me to enjoy, but not something for me to stress about. I hope to do more videos like this. I think there's something wonderful about the opportunity to study closely and see clearly what these great artists are doing and be able to apply it for ourselves, to actually be able to do it. And again, we want to do it in a simple way, even if we have the ability to do it in a very complex way. We want to do it in a simple way so that we can break it down and see clearly this one aspect, this one thing we're studying. Don't try and study 10 things at once. We can't take that much in. But focus on one thing. Here we looked at 3 things, 3 little parts, 3 aspects of one thing. We looked at them clearly, closely, and separately from everything else. And I think it gives us the opportunity to really understand that well.